In this ProteusDS training session, we're going to go through some fundamentals and working with the visualizer in ProteusDS Simulation Toolbox. The agenda covers the visualizer and how it's used in previewing a simulation setup, and camera controls and the navigation around the visualizer window. Optional to follow along are a couple of sample project files under PSD-1 and PSD-2. When you double click on the project file here, it'll open up in ProteusDS Simulation Toolbox. And we don't need to do that just yet though. Okay, when you're working in ProteusDS Simulation Toolbox, the visualizer button here on the ribbon or the F4 button will open the visualizer window. This gives you a sneak peek at what the setup of your simulation looks like. There's a bunch of different settings under the button here with gears. Often I like to show the water surface as it gives me a good visual reference for where the mean water surface is set up. To go back to the associated project window, click on this button here and it'll highlight the ProteusDS Simulation Toolbox window that's associated with the visualizer. Let's talk about camera controls. When you're working with the camera controls, you need to understand that what you're moving around is the focal point of the visualizer camera itself. If you use the default keyboard settings, the middle mouse button will rotate about the camera focal point. So it starts off at the global frame location, and you can see we're rotating about this location right here. If you use the right mouse button, it'll pan the camera focal point around, up, down, and to the sides. Now when we rotate the camera, you can see that it's rotating about a different location than the global frame. The mouse wheel zooms in and out, and it may look like we're moving forward, but it is not actually moving the camera focal point around. If you want to move the camera focal point forward, use the W key, or backwards with the S key. So you can see we're walking towards the origin, we're almost back at the origin, and the camera focal point's now very close to the origin. We're rotating about that. You can also use A and D on the keyboard to pan left and right as well, instead of the right mouse button. The global reference frame has a red indicator aligned with the X global reference frame, which is 0 degrees north. Green is the y-axis, pointing 90 degrees east, and Z is positive down. You'll also notice a compass here. This follows the camera wherever you are located and has the same orientation as the global frame, but it stays with the view of the camera to help keep track of the orientation of the view. Okay, we're going to open up one of the sample projects to play a little bit with the visualizer. In this case, we have a rigid body with a cube hull shape. When you left click on an entity in the window, it's going to change to red as it's highlighted, showing the selection. Note this also highlights it in the tree. We can move the camera around this this rigid body. If we move away from it, you can, as long as it's selected in the tree here, and if you click on the target button, it'll center the camera focal point back on that object. So it's a really great way to get focus on the object that you're looking at. There's a few other settings for turning on the mesh panels and things to make it easier to see things in the simulation for when you have hull components on rigid bodies. We're going to open up another project, PST-2, over here. This is a bit more of a complex scenario that uses a custom bathymetry. There's quite a lot going on here with this bathymetry. It's a very large scale And there's a few rigid bodies in here with different hulls, a box and a sphere and a rigid body that's fixed with a post and a cube. So the bathymetry space is a few square kilometers, and it's nice to be able to use these to practice moving around and rotating the camera focal point to see what that's like. All right, so just reviewing, we went through working with the visualizer to preview a simulation setup, working with the camera controls and navigation around in the world. Thanks for watching.